Hello, thanks for joining us on National Focus. I'm Jarna Hector. Coming up, Prime Minister Skerrit describes disaster relief as a priority, details of safety measures to be adopted in Dominica's geothermal energy project, and Dominica to host international women's cricket teams this weekend. Stay with us for details of these and other stories when National Focus returns.
You're watching GIS.
Welcome back. Energy Minister Honorable Rayburn Blackmore has assured residents of the Roseau Valley that government will put all necessary systems in place to guarantee their safety in relation to the geothermal project. The minister's remarks came following a meeting held by residents of Loda earlier this week to discuss concerns regarding the project.
I want to give the people of Loda people in the Loda Valley area the assurance that the government of Dominica will continue to take all the necessary steps to put systems in place to mitigate against any risk that may emerge as a result of our efforts in developing that resource.
The minister says in March 2011, prior to the commencement of test well drilling in the Roseau Valley, government, with the support of Caraïbe Environnement, a French consulting firm of Guadeloupe, launched an environmental impact assessment of the area. The main purpose of that assessment was to assist in setting up the necessary controls regarding environmental protection and risk mitigating measures before and during the exploratory drilling phase. The minister noted that commissioning of the EIA was in keeping with government's policy that prior to the start of any geothermal resource development, positive EIA ratings must be realized. This policy position, according to the minister, is consistent with the country's Nature Isle and Green Ecotourism branding strategy and the advancement of sustainable development. Minister Blackmore explained further that prior to the commencement of the drilling process, government held several consultations with residents of the Roseau Valley to keep them abreast with plans regarding the geothermal project.
Before and during the actual drilling of the test wells, there were a series of consultation with the villagers in the various areas, Loda, Wharton River, Trafalgar, among others. And of course, there was tremendous participation insofar as those consultations were concerned.
Minister Blackmore stated that a number of professional companies have been contracted to assist government throughout the process.
During the actual processes of the test wells drilling, the government of Dominica sought support from persons with the best talents insofar as geothermal development is concerned. And we contracted the ISO group, that's an Icelandic company, and they were responsible for actually doing the testing and the environmental monitoring of the test wells. Further to that, a company of the highest repute, that is Geothermal Resource Group, that's an American company, consulting firm, were contracted to do the actual supervision of that process. Further to that, an Italian company, I think electro consultant, with the level of expertise that is second to none, insofar as having geologists and persons trained in mining, etc., who actually contracted to ensure that there was full compliance with the various processes insofar as the mitigation process is concerned.
The Energy Minister says government will continue to meet with the people of the Roseau Valley to discuss their concerns as the project progresses.
We will continue as we move to the next level, that is the production and injection well, to consult and to meet with the people of Loda, Trafalgar, Wharton River. And further to that, we will ensure that all the property rights of the villagers are safeguarded and maintained throughout the processes. I must say, thus far, the people of Loda and Trafalgar, Wharton Waven and Fokane have been very wonderful and receptive. And to the employees of the management unit within the Ministry of Public Works, Energy and Ports, and we are very much concerned about the fact that there are a number of persons who have genuine concern, and they have a right to be concerned as Dominican. So there will be no situation whereby the government of Dominica will move in and just simply take people's land. As we move forward, and if there's an issue where people will be affected insofar as the property is concerned, we'll ensure that it is done in the most democratic and civilized manner.
The government of Dominica is now in the process of developing the Geothermal Resource Development Bill, which will place emphasis on regulation of the environment. The Geothermal Resource Development Bill proposes strict adherence to the physical planning laws and regulations, the environmental laws, and the Electricity Supplies Act of 2006. The minister says a guide of excellence will take into consideration all the required mitigating factors that will ensure minimal risk to the environment. In other news, government's response to nationals affected by natural disasters will continue to be treated as priority. So says Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, who has revealed that over $10 million have been spent to restore favorable living conditions in Western communities worst affected by the Layu River and Ophelia floods disasters. The nation's leader explained that those monies which could have been used elsewhere had to be spent in the areas of greatest need. That said, Prime Minister Skerrit attests that his government operates with the well-being of citizens as the focal point of every major decision.
We don't have the fiscal space. We don't have money to have a special disaster fund. So you have to go to the Treasury and take monies from that. And therefore, sometimes you need to do a road. Am I going to pursue the road or leave people homeless, leave people hungry, leave people with no clothes? You understand what I'm saying? So I have to make a deliberate decision. And sometimes I have to take a decision to set aside a project that we plan on doing, improving the roads, to help people. And I think that's what we have to understand sometimes. That yes, we had the money to do the road. And the reason why the road is bad is because the government took that money and helped several dozens of families who were affected by natural disaster. And I don't think as people we should not be supportive of that. And I understand people express frustration over the condition of the roads, or they want this project on your constituency or in your village and so on. And it's not forthcoming. We have to understand that you need money to do these things. And if the money is not there at the time, I mean, no matter what we say or what we do, it just can't be done because the government had to respond.
Honorable Skerrit pointed out that there are other areas around the country, such as Vekas and Penville, which also require financial attention.
And if the people in Maro, Massac, and St. Joseph are exposed more than my community, I have to assist, because if you drive from my constituency in Penville, you will see the condition of the road. It's the worst in the country. You understand? As a result of the water project and all the issues, but it's the worst in the country. And people have expressed concerns, but they're also patient, knowing that in time the road will be restored. You understand? So when I hear people complain about roads in the other areas and so on, I tell them, take a drive to Penn. From Gillette right back to Vekas, you will see the condition of the road there. And even the secondary roads in Penn.
In that vein, he detailed government's response to the Layu River and Ophelia floods disasters, on which over $10 million have been spent.
We've tried to empower the local people in Maho area, St. Joseph area, to do those projects for us. We're doing roads inside there. The Chinese government has agreed, as you know, to build a new Clackall bridge that's close to the hot water. They should start in 2013. The designs are being finalized between themselves and the Ministry of Public Works. That will be done. Housing, people who have been affected with their homes washed away by the flood there. The Chinese government has agreed to provide the funding for a number of persons, and that also should begin in 2013. They're finalizing, in some cases, the location.
According to the Prime Minister, given the state of the world's finances, Dominica's leadership has done very well in the aftermath of those disasters.
We're responding, and I mean, it's not easy to respond to those things. First of all, we gave people, I believe, 60% of the total value of what they lost. 60%. You understand? I mean, there are people in New York and New Jersey who are still living in shelters. You understand? Still living in shelters. The assistance have not reached many of them. The people in Louisiana, years later after Hurricane Katrina, were still displaced. Can't come back to Louisiana because they have nothing to come back to.
That's correct.
You see what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying so to criticize the U.S. government or the authorities there. I'm just trying to tell people that they have to appreciate what this government has been doing with limited or no resources to respond to natural disasters.
Honorable Skerrit therefore solicits the patience of citizens in the task of nation building and rebuilding.
We have to be patient and understand that the government functions similar to how our families function. Our children may make many requests of us, but at the end of the day, you need the money to do it. And if you don't have the money to do it at the time, the children have to understand that you don't have money to do it. You know, and you have to explain to them. So this is where it is, and so it's costing us a lot of money, one, to respond to the disaster, but also to put mitigating mechanisms in place to minimize the damage that could be done if, God forbid, something were to happen again.
On the subject of priority programs for governments, Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit revealed that the care of Dominica's elderly is at the top of that list. Senior citizens around the island can rest assured that government will continue to look after their needs. Prime Minister Skerrit says there is no end in sight for the Yes We Care program.
We believe that we have a fundamental responsibility, a Christian responsibility, to care for the elderly. We can't abandon them, you know, and while it is costing us a lot of money, but I believe the investments in the elderly is worth it. Because there's just too many of older persons who are just at the homes having to cook for themselves and not have a bath in months and not clean their rooms in months and so homes in months. That has stopped. We put an end to this. And this program is going to continue for as long as we're in office. And for me, in all what we've done in this country, all the infrastructure, to me this project, this program is the dearest to me. Because I have visited people who have benefited. I knew them before the program started because they're the ones who encouraged this program. You understand? By seeing the way they live. And when I visit them now, I mean, these people look much younger than they were before. Their homes are clean. They get a bath. They have a meal. And I am prepared to set aside a road or something else to ensure that there's funding for this. So this is a priority program for us in terms of funding.
Additionally, Prime Minister Skerrit has expressed appreciation to the supervisors and caregivers employed with the Yes We Care program. He assured the public that the island's elders are in the hands of caregivers who are sympathetic and genuinely caring.
People who are going to be employed as caregivers, I don't want people with qualifications. No I don't want people with CXC and GC and all those things. I want to know how well these people are caring for their children and how well they're caring for their parents and for their grandparents. For me, that has to be a qualification. Not CXC and GC. You know? And because at the end of the day, it's going to be about compassion. It's going to be about loving people. It's about being patient and tolerant and so forth. And these are the qualifications you need to care for the elderly and the love for people.
The Prime Minister was speaking at a recent end-of-year interview with Mervyn Paul. In more news, National Security Minister Honorable Charles Savre is assuring the public that police will continue to adopt all procedures that will aid in crime solving. The minister's comments came amidst criticisms that the police are not doing enough to solve criminal investigations within the state. Honorable Savre notes that crime solving weighs heavily on the availability of credible information and cautions that it's impossible for the court system to make a conviction in the absence of valid evidence.
I believe in all respects that the police are making a significant effort to investigate all crimes. But one has got to understand that the evidence, you cannot convict a person in the court of law on the basis of assumptions. You have to have the evidence. And even when persons make confessions, they can retract the confession in a court of law. And if you have no evidence other than the confession, then your case, if the person is represented at all by any legal practitioner worth half his salt, your case will fold. So that while confessions are useful, you have to bring evidence, hard evidence, to the courts, witness statements, physical evidence, forensic evidence, that you can show to the court that it is incontrovertible, that this person was there, that this person did touch, did handle, did leave, did do certain things.
Minister Savre says one has to be found guilty beyond reasonable doubt in order to be convicted by the courts.
In our court system, you have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And when one's defense attorneys can create reasonable doubt in the mind of the jury, the judge, or the magistrate, the accused walks. So that, and then there is a question of double jeopardy. If you've brought a person to the courts prematurely, you do not have the evidence to put before the courts to get a conviction, the person may or may not be the actual person who committed the offense, but in the absence of compelling evidence, the matter is brought before the courts. Defense attorney is able to raise questions which create doubt in the minds of the judge, jury, and the magistrate. Then the person walks.
In recent times, there have been calls from sections of society for the Director of Public Prosecution to withdraw cases in respect of some people who have been charged. The minister says that decision lies with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, since it would have to be based on the availability of credible information.
It is the responsibility of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to review the file, and since they are the agency who prosecute, they have to be satisfied that there is physical, hard evidence which would improve the chances of a conviction. If there is no physical or hard evidence, then a determination is made, well, look, I mean, is it worth the while of the prosecution to pursue this matter in court when the file does not indicate that there is a hard evidence? There may be a statement, there may be some person who thought maybe he might have seen or heard something, and that is all that you have. Then a determination would be made by the Office of the Director of Public, or by the Director of Public Prosecution, as the case may be, as to whether to pursue the matter.
As crime-solving efforts continue, the Ministry of National Security has called on the general public to play a more responsible role in assisting the police in solving crimes through the new Crime Stoppers hotline. Meanwhile, education and the development of young people have been the target of many programs set in motion by the Roosevelt Skerrit-led administration since assuming the reins of leadership in 2009. To date, after numerous endeavors to make education more accessible to all Dominican youth, Prime Minister Skerrit is saying that accessibility is not enough. The country's leader has taken further steps to provide young people with the means to access education, more specifically at the primary and secondary levels. In addition to school feeding programs and financial aid available for school books, school uniforms, and school fees, Honorable Skerrit says transportation of students to school is essential as well. Transportation
has been a key. As a matter of fact, now I believe we may we almost have national coverage in terms of providing transportation to students. I believe most students who have a distance from school to home, we provide transportation to them free of charge. In Salisbury, in Collyho, in Cottage constituency, in the whole of Vickers constituency, Calibishi, Wesley, Woodfordale, Marigot, you know, Petit Savan, Soufriere, Scotshead, you know, all of these communities are covered. Bells, you know, you name it, we cover it in terms of transportation. Dalis, the whole of Lapland constituency, you understand, Grand Fond, Rivière Syrique, Mont John. All of these areas provide transportation, and in some cases we also provide transportation to the primary school. So there's a community called Freyal, I think, in Rivière Syrique area. We provide transportation to the primary school students to go to the school in Mont John. In Bells, we provide transportation to the students who live in the wider Bells village to go to school.
In an effort to make primary and secondary education easier to earn, government is absorbing all costs for bus maintenance, fuel, and driver salaries. Government is also paying female conductors to provide for gender balance to make students more comfortable on the buses. In return for those conveniences, Prime Minister Skerrit only wants one thing from students and parents.
This thing costs money. When you add it up, you're talking about a lot of money. But these are important things. And what we're asking, all we're asking our young boys and girls to do, our children to do, is to study. Stay away from drugs. You know, have a positive view of yourself. Make your family proud. Make yourself proud. Make Dominica proud. Because it saddens me after spending all of this money in children, in our children, that some of them are still not taking advantage of it. It's still not remaining focused, you know. And I really want to appeal to the parents that we have to double up. You know, I know it's challenging for many of us, but we have to double up in terms of our supervision, in terms of our interest in our children. And our children know what's good, right and wrong. That they have to study, they have to do well, because, you know, I do not like to see any child drop out of school, because any child who drops out of school now, you're gonna find yourselves in difficulty with the law. You're gonna live a life that you know, none of us want for you. And so you have to decide what is that you want, and if somebody could make it, why can't you?
Finally, Dominica will host 3 of 5 one-day international matches when South Africa women's cricket team plays against the West Indies women's team at the Winter Park Stadium, kicking off the Women's International. Public Relations Officer of the Dominica Cricket Association, Mervyn Paul, says all is set up for the staging of the games. The matches are scheduled to take place on Saturday 12th, Sunday 13th, and Tuesday 15th, respectively.
From a facility standpoint, we're very ready. The stadium is intact. The playing area, the track, the pitch, whatever you want to call it, is intact. The outfield is good. We've had some rain over the last couple of weeks, but as we know, Windsor Park has the tradition of being a quick drying ground, and thankfully we're seeing the sun. So we think that there should be very little problems with the actual playing, the facility. And so that aspect of it, Dominica is very much on top of the game. Everything is in place for the scoreboard and everything, the scorers, and the liaisons and everything is fine, you know. The teams come in today, Thursday, they're supposed to be in today, and we'll embark on practice sessions for the entire day tomorrow.
Paul says the West Indies women's team put on a tremendous performance at the recent World Cup. He also says Dominicans can look forward to an interesting weekend of cricket when the West Indian women players come up against South Africa.
The West Indies women team is a very competitive team. In fact, they made it to the semi-finals of the World T20 Cup recently, and in fact, one of their players are in fact ranked as the number one all-rounder. So what we're expecting to see in Dominica is good cricket, good performances from top players. The South African team is a very tough team. In fact, they've beaten the West Indies team already in this series, and so the West Indies team would look to come from behind. And so because of that, we expect very, very competitive cricket.
Paul is encouraging members of the public to come out in large numbers to support the games.
We expect the Dominican public to come out and support women's cricket. The South African men, when they were here, had very high ratings for the crowd and the facility, and we don't expect the women to go back and not say the same thing. And you know, there is the thing wherever women are, men like to go, so we expect the stadium to be filled with male supporters, but women as well supporting West Indies cricket.
Following the ODIs, the teams will move on to the Beausejour Cricket Grounds in St. Lucia for 2 back-to-back 2020 matches on the 19th and 20th of February. Dominica had its first taste of international women's cricket last February, when Carnival lovers were given a special after-Carnival treat when the Windies women's team played the India women's team in 2 2020 international matches at the Windsor Park. The matches took place on Ash Wednesday, February 22nd and February 23rd. And that's news. Learn how you can reduce your carbon footprint in our upcoming tip of the day. You probably hear the term carbon footprint quite often. Your carbon footprint is simply the amount of carbon dioxide you create when you use fossil fuels. One way to reduce your footprint is to unplug appliances that you don't frequently use. Most electronics have a standby mode that still consume energy even when not in use, like cell phone chargers, laptops, televisions, and stereos. There's a whole list of items that should be unplugged when not in use. Try using a power strip for groups of electronic items so that by one flick of the switch you can reduce your carbon footprint. By reducing your footprint, you contribute to preserving the ozone layer. And that's all for this edition of National Focus. We welcome your suggestions and comments. Please feel free to drop us an email at gis@dominica.gov.dm or visit our website at news.gov.dm. Friend us on our Facebook page and be sure to like our GIS Dominica fan page. You can also catch up on past National Focus newscasts on our GIS Dominica YouTube page. On behalf of the entire news production team, I'm Jarna Hector. Thanks for watching.